Well, hello again. Got some notes here again. Well, the AARO Report, Volume 1, came out yesterday, I think. It might have been very early this morning, Australian time. The All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office. It's quite a detailed report, 60 pages, and basically it says they've thoroughly investigated all the claims made by these piffle peddlers. They've been out and they've contacted the senior people at the aerospace companies that they've been told by these witnesses that have this extraterrestrial material, these recovered alien spacecraft. And they've been told categorically by these companies that they certainly don't. So it's all fallen in a heap, really, for the ET UFO fanboys. The report says they've thoroughly investigated it. They've talked to a lot of witnesses. No one can provide any tangible evidence. They've interviewed people at the aerospace companies, any of the companies that are supposedly involved in this crash retrieval program, analysing recovered ET materials. It's all nonsense. Nobody has any ET materials, just as I said in the previous videos. It's all science fiction hogwash. So to the surprise of nobody with an IQ bigger than their shoe size, the AARO report says it's all science fiction rubbish. Have I said that previously? It's 1:30 in the afternoon. I've had a fairly busy day. I was up quite early today. Now I have to wonder why Gary Nolan didn't go and see AARO or Sean Kirkpatrick, any of the AARO people, with his ETs at the bottom of the bed story. Had ETs, aliens at the bottom of his bed when he was a kid. Aliens at the bottom of his bed when he just started being a professor at Stanford. Talked to him in his head. In English, apparently. But then we all know that every alien in the galaxy watches Star Trek and they learn the English language because it's a universal language. So I hope somebody asked Gary Nolan why he didn't do that. Maybe he did, but he couldn't prove it. I'd be surprised if he would sign a statement to that effect. But there we go. What makes Gary Nolan so special, you'd have to wonder. He's a kid. Many years later, they come back and see him again. He didn't say what he actually said to him in his head. Didn't say what the aliens said to him when he was a kid. But if you're going to fly across the galaxy to see a specific person, and having two visits suggests that's what they did, you'd think they would have a specific purpose. What are they going to ask this guy? So, of course, Lou Elizondo has said, oh, we've got all the information, but we'll release it. We've got all the evidence, but we're going to release it at a time of our choosing. Now, he doesn't release it now, or they don't release it now, as a rebuttal to the AARO report, because they haven't got anything. They haven't got anything to release. It's all hogwash. Elizondo has got to keep the intrigue going because he doesn't want his book deal to evaporate. Philip Corso, Volume 2, the sequel. We've got to. He doesn't want his book deal to evaporate. As I've said before, all these people have got book deals out there. And of course AARO have said no one's being visited by aliens. No one's interacting with aliens. Not one-armed woodcutters. Not lumberjacks. And I think the boss of the lumberjack gang that was with Travis Walton has said it was all a con. It's a fabrication. No surprise there, Whitley Strieber's story. Ridiculous. Personal opinion. It's all nonsense. So, Elizondo doesn't want his book deal to evaporate. He's still got to work on that because he's written the memoir. Now he's got to come up with all this stuff that he's got to seed it with, and he's got to impress his publishers with that. That's the tricky bit. So is his conscience going to let him do what Corso did? We'll just have to wait and see. I'll get a copy from the library and have a look at it. I'm not spending any money on it, that's for sure. There's a guy called Moran. Is it Brian Moran or Brian the Moron? And he's worked for everybody under the sun in the American government, apparently. Super soldiers and all this sort of stuff. The sort of garbage that you see on Miles Johnston's channel, you know, fighting in the astral. And he said, anyway, this Moran said he's a mate of Elizondo's. Elizondo says, who's this bloke? He's certainly not a friend of his. And there's a bit of infighting going on with the ET fanboys at the moment, you know, because of what Danny Sheehan said, you know, and then Travis Taylor come out and said what Sheehan said was a load of rubbish. It's all bullshit. Remember Eric Davis says what Bob Lazar says is all bullshit. I saw a picture of Bob Lazar looking quite dapper, holding up an Easter egg covered in tinfoil, and he said, oh, here we have a sample of element 115. So I'd have to ask Bob Lazar why he doesn't go along, give a statement to AARO, and give a sample, give the Easter egg to AARO to analyse, you know, and we'll find out what it really is. Of course, we still haven't heard any results from Nolan about the Texas alien ball, plain old ball check valve, made in the US of A. Coulthard, of course, is still trying to keep all this nonsense alive. You know, he's got a book to sell, and you've got to bear in mind too that as a rebuttal to the AARO report, Coulthard saying, oh, it's all controlled, the media's all controlled. Not possible to control the media. Stories always get out. Someone trying to control the media would be a bigger story than the story they're trying to control, you know. It's completely ludicrous. Coulthard could break it all wide open, of course. He could just tell us where this massive alien spacecraft is that's big as a football field or whatever it is, outside of the USA, so big they couldn't move it, they had to put a building over it. Well, just tell us where that is, Mr. Coulthard. We'll all go and have a look and see if you can prove AARO are talking rubbish. Show us the spacecraft. You're an investigative journalist. Stephen Greenstreet is running on the New York Post channel a live stream that keeps going through all the stuff he's done with regard to debunking all this. Well worth a watch. I might even leave a link to that below. Go and have a look at Stephen Greenstreet's stuff. He's thoroughly debunked all of this nonsense. He's an investigative journalist. Why can't Ross Coulthard, as an investigative journalist, uncover the same information? I suspect he can. But he won't, because he's an ET fanboy. He's got books to sell. He wants this to be true, just like Nolan, just like Pepsi Cola or whatever bloody name is. I can never remember. Diana Pasulka. Although she's a fangirl, obviously, not a fanboy. I did make a mistake actually with the last video. I know it's preposterous to even consider that I might make a mistake, but Danny Sheehan was saying, oh, they've got the DNA, and I said at the time that the interviewer should have jumped on that, and he should have done. That wasn't the mistake. But he did say who, and I missed it, and he said that the investigation panel or something had the alien DNA. Obviously that's not true, is it? Because if anyone's got alien DNA, AARO's going to know about it. They've got the clearances to listen to anybody, to see anything. If anyone wanted to prove a case that this is all true, all they've got to do is go to AARO, go to 60 Minutes, say, here it is, this is an alien windscreen wiper. You know, cut it up into bits, get it analysed by different universities around the world. That's all you got to do. There is no tangible evidence to support ET coming here. You know, I mean, Diana Pasulka, she said some time ago two things. Well, actually, she said three contradictory things. One was the timing and how many alien spacecraft have been recovered, On one occasion it was 4, and then the other it was 7, I think. The trip out to the site took an hour, then it took 45 minutes. She went out there with a guy that seems to be a fantasist. I mean, he might work for NASA, but that doesn't mean he's not delusional, he's not an ET fanboy, and he doesn't lap all this stuff up, you know. I mean, he's been seen with people that claim ET interaction, which is complete nonsense, of course. No one is interacting with ETs. They're not going to fly across the galaxy and interact with a failed construction worker, a one-armed woodcutter, or a lumberjack. It's ludicrous nonsense. It's rubbish. Anyway, Diana Pasulka, she said she went out to this crash site with this guy. She picked up a bit of wreckage and she scrunched it up, you know, straight out of Roswell. This is scrunched it up and it unfurled in her hand, surrounded by debris. And I thought, well, the rest of the debris's not done a very good job of unscrunching, has it? And when she's interviewed later on, some years later, she said, oh, there's no physical evidence. And people have asked me if I can take them to somebody who can show them some physical evidence. And the answer is I can't, because all this information is handed down verbally. There are no written records. There's no physical material. And that's what Diana Pasulka said. How ludicrous is that? Can you imagine, you know? Analysing something as complex as an alien spacecraft and keeping the information in your head for years, for decades, passing it on verbally. I mean, that's pretty much what AARO says, isn't it? You know, there is no tangible evidence. All it is stories that have been passed on and passed on and passed on by the same people at the core of all this for years, if not decades. It's stories, nothing tangible. While we're on the ET fanboys, you know, I wonder how long it's going to take for people like Stephen Bassett to realise that they've wasted their life on this nonsense. You know, are they going to say, "Okay, we'll accept it"? You know, is the only story that they will accept the dyed-in-the-wool UFO fanboys? The only story they will accept is it's all true. It's always been true, and it's true now. It's just been covered up. There's a truth embargo. Is that the only story they want to hear? I mean, if the American president or the Chinese president or someone like that came on and said, you know, we can confirm that we're not alone in the galaxy, in the universe. You know, we've been contacting aliens. Here's the recordings of everything we've got here, or you know, we've got some tangible evidence. We've got some materials here from an alien spacecraft. Then yeah, I'd accept it. I don't have a problem with that. They have a problem with being told there is no evidence. Doesn't matter how many times you tell these people, it's all just science fiction stories. There's no evidence. They will never ever believe it because they don't want to. They're not interested in the truth. They're interested in the science fiction ET narrative. That's it. Anything outside of that is a cover-up, is a truth embargo. Even Richard Dolan has realised that people are getting fed up to the back teeth of all this science fiction, UFO, UAP, ET rubbish. Now he's written a book on USOs, underwater, you know, unidentified submerged objects. He's given up on flying saucers. But he has said in the past, you know, writing books and giving talks about all this UFO ET stuff is a lot better than having to get a real job. He's not interested in getting a real job. He's said that in his own words. That's Richard Dolan. You know, so how much credibility can you assign to Dolan? Personally, I think none. Remember Elizondo as well as claimed remote viewing ability. You know, he's mates with far out guys like Hal Puthoff and, you know, Eric Davis, and connecting, you know, they're connecting to ETs with their consciousness. Complete and utter rubbish. Can you connect to ETs with your consciousness? This is a recurring theme. Eamon Ansbro with his machine, with his PVC pipes with the coils on, you know. Eamon Ansbro, PhD ABD. Means he hasn't got a PhD. oh yeah, well you can't use the machine, you can't use the device as a standalone communications device to talk to aliens. You've got to use that in conjunction with your consciousness to communicate with the aliens. So and we've got John Stewart, the guy that always looks perpetually happy. He's still peddling the alien interview story as being real. It obviously isn't, of course. I've demonstrated the vertical line device. Complete and utter nonsense. I mean, you've only got to look at it for 2 minutes. Anyone with an IQ bigger than their shoe size can see that is fake within, I don't know, 20 seconds. You know, no sound, extremely poor lighting, you know. Oh, it's because the alien can't stand the light, and then someone shines a torch in its eyes, you know. Complete and utter drivel. So, yeah, I think that's about it. I thought I'd do a quick video as the AARO Report has just come out. But if you look at all the contradictory information that's floating around as well, you know, with all the infighting with the within the ET fanboy group, it all looks to me like it's falling apart at the seams. Be interesting to see what Volume 2 of the AARO Report has to say. I don't know when that's due out, but certainly Volume 1, which goes back to 1947, it's the Mogul balloon crash at Roswell, is the most likely case, what most likely happened in that case. There's zero evidence of ET involvement, zero recovered ET materials, all the way, right the way through, and they've looked at the different projects all the way through. They've looked at the aerospace companies. There is nothing there. When it comes to ET, recovered extraterrestrial materials, nothing there. And apparently this Kona project was set up, that was real, to look at recovered alien biological and technological material. But I think it was set up as part of ORSAP, you know, the Skinwalker Ranch, dino beavers, werewolves, but of course they wound that up when they found they had no materials to analyse. So there you go. So no harm setting something up in case you find something, especially if you've just started a project to investigate it. You put $22 million in the pot to investigate it, you think you might set something up to do something with anything they might find. And they found nothing. So they disbanded it. Nothing strange about that. Skinwalker Ranch, apparently now they've found an alien spacecraft buried in the ground. At Skinwalker Ranch. And they can't dig it up and show it to anyone. They can't get permission. They can't get permission from the council to dig it up. Now, if that was me, I would have dug it up, got the film crews in, everything else, you know, and then said sorry. You know, it's always easier to apologise, isn't it, than get permission. They haven't done that because it doesn't exist. I did a video about Skinwalker Ranch a long time ago. If you look at it on Google Earth, there's loads of fracking wellheads all around the property, gas and oil, fracking. So if you're walking around Skinwalker Ranch and you hear some funny noises, you know, or your eyes start watering, you know, it's probably gas coming out of the ground from all the fracking and all the oil that, production that's being done all around the property. I think Frugal will realise that one day, and he'll wind it up and he'll stick some fracking wellheads on the property and make more money out of it. That's probably where this will end up. But it's like Skinwalker Ranch, I've said it before, you know, a book that thick full of stories, not one picture. It's absolute bloody rubbish. Any strange effects, you know, glowing balls of gas, there'll be a lot of methane coming out of the ground, you know. goodness knows what else. It's probably what made Stephen Greenstreet's eyes water. Just something coming out of the ground, and they knew there was something coming out of the ground around where they told him to go, because they knew it would have that effect on him. It's all science fiction rubbish. It's manipulated claptrap. And I can't wait to see Elizondo's book. As I say, I'm not going to buy it, obviously, but I can't wait to see it, you know, because all he ever says is, well, I can't talk about that. He can't talk about it. He certainly can't write about it, can he? So I think he's in a bit of a pickle at the moment. This is why it's all being pushed back, and it's pushed back, and it's pushed back at the time of our choosing, you know, because he's still thinking, how the hell am I going to do this, you know? Do I really want to go down in history as another Philip Corso? Philip Corso 2. Another military bullshitter, you know? Put it all in writing. How many more of them have got books out there about all this rubbish, you know? That Diana Pasulka, she's got a book out called Cosmic. She's a professor of religion, you know? She's never seen any aliens. She's never seen... She's only been told science fiction stories. She chooses to believe it, and she's writing books about it. You know, the failed contractor writing books about talking to aliens, liaising with aliens. Bob Lazar, look into his history. Look at what he's done since he was supposedly... Well, he did work at S4 as a radiation badge technician or radiation detection equipment technician. He's no scientist. Stanton Friedman said he's no physicist. He always ran away when Stanton Friedman was around. He wouldn't sit down and talk to Stanton Friedman if they were at a conference together. And most of these conferences, you know, Alien Con and all this other, they all end in con. They're telling you what they're doing. If you look at the talking fees all these people get, that's why they want to keep it alive. You know, Travis Taylor, you know, $4,000 for this, $8,000 for that. All these people stand up there, it's ka-ching time. And they rely on all these gullible, bloody half-wits all over the world lapping this up, saying, oh, it's the truth embargo, we know they're here, you know. And I'll pay $2,000 to go and listen to this guy tell me science fiction stories, because that's what I want to hear. I lap it up. Like a lizard drinking, as we say here in Australia. Lap it up. Pay through the nose to lap up all this science fiction rubbish. And they'll probably continue to do so, because they're not smart enough to realise what the truth is. They've made their mind up. They're science fiction fans. They go to the science fiction conferences. They go to all these UFO conferences, you know. They've made their mind up, it's all real. It doesn't matter how many times you can tell them till you're blue in the face. People that know, people that have been tasked with finding out, with all the clearances, you know. They can go and talk to anybody. They've got clearance to talk to anybody, to see any evidence. And there is none. And lastly, there's no point in covering it up. If they went to Lockheed and Lockheed said, actually, yeah, we've got this flying saucer here, be all over the internet, be all over every television channel on the face of the earth. And they'd all be fighting each other to get the Nobel Prize, to be the first person to announce that we are not alone in the universe. You know, everybody remembers Neil Armstrong, first man on the moon. First person to do anything is the one that's remembered. You know, how many of you, okay, we can name Buzz Aldrin because he was the public face, if you like, of Apollo 11. Neil Armstrong didn't want to know anything about publicity, so people remember Buzz Aldrin. How many people watching this video, without looking it up, can name any two of the remaining astronauts involved in the Apollo lunar missions? So 13, 14, I know 13 didn't land there, it was still an Apollo mission. 15, 16, 17, they're all three-man crews. So, you know, how many people, how many of those astronauts can you name without looking them up? People that went to the moon, people that walked on the moon. There's only half a dozen of them walked on the moon, wasn't there? 11, 14, 15, 16, 17, yeah. So 12 guys walked on the moon. How many can you name without looking it up? So anybody involved in this, if this was real, they'd want to be the first, because they would be the ones whose names would go down in history. They would be the ones that got the Nobel Prize. It's not real, is it? All right, well, I think that's enough of an update and a bit of a rant there. I don't think there's anything I've missed. Yeah, I think that's about it. So, as always, if you've struggled through the video all the way to this point, many thanks for watching, and maybe I'll catch you again.